So let's jump right in. We're doing a deep dive today on a huge question. Why are some countries, so wealthy, while others just seem permanently stuck?
Right. And the sources we're examining, they argue this isn't random at all. It's by design. The core idea is that underdevelopment was essentially an architectural feature of colonialism, not some kind of bug.
An architectural feature, I like that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that design. The sources really focus on this massive split, right, between two very different kinds of colonial institutions.
Exactly. On one side, you have what they call extractive frameworks.
Which were designed purely to, just drain wealth out of a place.
Precisely. Just pull resources out and send them to the metropole. And then on the other side, you have inclusive institutions, which were built for settlers to basically replicate the stable property rights and market incentives they had back home.
Okay, so that's the model. But what actually decided which path a colony went down? Because the sources point to something I found, frankly, incredible. It wasn't ideology, it was germs.
It's wild, isn't it? It pretty much boils down to the local disease environment. I mean, in places where European mortality from things like malaria or yellow fever was just incredibly high.
They weren't going to stick around and build a new London, were they?
No way. So they opted for a low investment, high coercion model, the extractive state. The goal was to get in, get the rubber or the ivory, and get out with the absolute minimum investment.
But the flip side is where they could survive. Like in North America or Australia, they built up these inclusive institutions.
Exactly. Property rights, courts, things that give people an incentive to invest for the long term.
And that one, early choice, gets logged in. It becomes path dependent. So even after independence, the new elites often just took over the exact same extractive machinery for themselves.
So that's the sort of invisible institutional software. But what about the physical hardware that colonialism left behind? Let's talk about the borders.
The Berlin Conference in the 1880s, basically just carving up a continent with rulers on a map.
And completely ignoring the realities on the ground, which, creates two huge persistent problems. First, you get partitioning, where they split a single ethnic group, like the Somali people, across several new countries.
Or the opposite problem, forced cohabitation, where you cram, over 200 distinct ethnic groups into the framework of the DR Congo and just sort of hope it works out.
And then you have to look at the infrastructure. I think this idea of the radial trap is so powerful.
The wagon wheel analogy.
Yes, picture it. Colonial railways are the spokes, and they all run from the resource-rich interior directly to a port on the coast, the rim for export.
But crucially, there are no connecting lines along the rim. There are no spokes between the spokes.
Exactly. And the consequence, even today, is that it's often structurally easier and cheaper to fly from a capital in Central Africa to Paris than it is to travel to the capital of the country right next door.
Which locks nations into that pattern of external extraction instead of building regional trade.
And that dependency, it didn't just vanish with independence, it just morphed. It became neocolonialism. You can see it clearly with something like the CFA franc system.
This is where member states are required to deposit a huge portion of their foreign reserves in the French treasury, right?
A huge portion. It's now 50%, so they literally have to borrow their own money back from Paris to fund their budgets. Just think about that for a second.
And if you want a picture of the modern drain, the sources pointed to a figure on debt that is just, it's staggering.
The interest payments.
The interest payments. Between 1970 and 2023, governments in the global south paid an estimated $2.2 trillion in interest to Western creditors.
$2.2 trillion. That's a wealth transfer on a colossal scale.
But, this legacy is heavy, but the sources are clear that history isn't destiny. There are examples of countries that broke the mold.
Absolutely. Botswana is a fantastic example. They managed to maintain their pre-colonial governance system, the Kagatla, which created broad public consent for how to invest their diamond wealth.
And you've also got places like Mauritius, which successfully diversified its economy using export processing zones.
So the lesson really is that dismantling that old extractive state is possible, but it requires consciously reconfiguring that infrastructure to build regional links.
Okay, so let's synthesize this for a final thought. A lot of this struggle is tied up in what economists call the terms of trade trap.
Which is this idea that the price of the raw materials you export keeps falling compared to the price of the manufactured goods you have to import. You're always playing catch-up.
You're running just to stand still. So here's the provocative thought for you to take away.
As the world pushes for a green transition, think about what that requires. It requires vast amounts of cobalt, lithium.
All raw materials.
Yeah.
So we have to ask, is this new green economy just replicating the old colonial model? The global south provides the raw materials.
While corporations in the global north control the high-value manufacturing, the patents, and, at the end of the day, the profit. It's something to keep in mind as you look at today's headlines.